All right, guys, welcome back. Today I'm continuing my series on some X-Wing fighters. Both of these are the same scale, 1/72nd, but they're from different manufacturers. One is made by Fine Molds from about 2005. One is from Bandai, about 2015. And so while they're the same size, same subject, they are very different. My personal taste means I like the Fine Molds more because it is more of a traditional model kit. As I build these up on camera today, you'll see the Bandai. It's something on its own. It is a little clunkier. It is snap to fit, a little less model gluing. And the only thing that really I can say that's not quite good about it is because it utilizes different color injection. Sometimes you end up with a little bit more complicated of a build than what you actually need because they want to kind of put together like a puzzle. So you get the red parts doing the red parts of the ship. I don't need that because I'm going to paint the entire thing. So these are just a little unnecessary. And you can really just see kind of how full it is of different snap together points. As I build it up, you'll see a difference between the Bandai and the Fine Molds. And while I prefer the traditional kind of style of the Fine Molds, the Bandai, definitely incredible engineering, and the detail, while it's good on the Fine Molds, it's just a little bit better on the Bandai. But when we're done, there really won't be much of a difference between the two. As I discussed in the last video, these ships will not be anything from the movies or the shows. These will be kind of something from, I don't know, suppose my own fan fiction. We're going to call this one Shadow 1, this one Shadow 2. And rather than elite fighters, these are escorts or couriers. So let's get to business. We're going to start off by building the Bandai. And we're going to start building it up around the wings, the S-foils that we built last time. Let's be honest, that was exceptionally cool. It was really cool to see it come together, especially kind of all of those red and white pieces kind of puzzling together to give that striping. If you want to kind of paint it, that would be so cool. But it felt more like playing with Legos rather than building a model. And I'm going to paint over that anyways. But that is kind of the build of the Bandai X-Wing. After all of that on the Bandai, the fine molds is going to be pretty darn simplistic. So I have done a few things off camera. I've gone ahead and glued this bulkhead in place. I've glued a second bulkhead to the back end cap of the entire ship, and that's going to hold the wing mechanism. I have also glued our cockpit assembly and painted it roughly into the ship as well. You can see much less than on the Bandai. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to glue these two halves together. We'll glue those together and clean up the seams off camera. That'll just take a minute or two. All right, we're just going to take a minute or two off camera to let that glue set. All right, with that glued and some of the seams worked on a little bit, we're going to go ahead and insert the wings. We just have to make sure that we get this post into that hole for the bulkhead. Right, after that we can install this little mechanical strip here. That's also where our astromech droid will sit. After that, we just want to put the rear of the ship on, and once again we want to make sure that post fits into the hole that's on that rear bulkhead, and hopefully we should be able to push everything closed and glue it tightly. All right, and that's the assembly for the fine molds. All right, we're getting ready for paint, which means we have masked it off so that we can paint the body of the ship and not paint the wings that we've already done. On the Bandai, I'll be able to snap this cockpit cover off, so I have just kind of masked off the openings in that. We'll pop that off later and paint that nicely. With the fine molds, I did glue the canopy in, so I had to do more precise masking, so we'll just be painting the window frames on that. And our paint plan is the same as it always is. We're going to spray it all silver to represent the metal the ship is made out of. We will salt it, and then we will do our light gray, followed by our squadron colors. we can go ahead and start moving on and painting some of the additional panels on the X-Wing. Okay, let's talk about panel lines. So there are super thin panel lines on the fine mold. You can just see a few of them around here. The ones on fine mold are probably more accurate to the scale, but that's really not fun for modelers. The Bandai definitely has better panel lines, more distinct. They will hold the wash a little bit better. And I've done a bit of a wash over on this other side. Now, Bandai plastic is different than a lot of modeling plastic. Bandai's really react poorly to oil-based paints and really terribly to kind of oil-based thinners. It weakens the plastic, it cracks it, and because there is just a tiny bit of tension on the parts because they're snap fit, things are held together so tightly. If you let mineral oil or enamel-based thinners sit on the model, it can crack it and really lead to some unfortunate situations. So I can't really do my panel line washes like I usually do. You have to put them on and take them off very quickly. You want to make sure your model is sealed with a layer of paint so that that enamel thinner and those oils aren't directly on the plastic. So you can use an oil wash on these. You just have to be very, very careful. On the fine molds, those panel lines are really too thin to hold much of a wash at all. We'll be able to do a little bit of a wash over on kind of these parts that have raised surfaces to bring out some of the detail, but panel lines, we probably won't be able to see much of those at all. And really, panel lines on this scale are out of scale and unrealistic no matter what. Even on the 1/48th, you can see I've done a lot of washes on my big one here to really accent those panel lines, but that is absolutely out of scale. You would never have panel lines this distinct on a real ship from the distance it would be if you were looking at it and you saw this. But it is kind of fun for modeling, and it does kind of bring out some of the details. So I still do panel washes, even though I know it's kind of unrealistic for the scale. All right, so this is going to be a put on and take off pretty quickly. Last weathering step is to use some chalk pastels. add a lot of kind of dirty smudges around the engine. So we're going to start just right around here. And we're going to pull those streaks backwards. We're going to pull those streaks back. I also like to take some of these parts where we've had a lot of the chipping and add just a few smudges around those. And usually just one or two little scorch marks on the ship. Of course, we'll do just a little bit around these back engines. Here are my completed X-Wings, my Bandai 172nd and my Fine Molds 172nd. Really fun models, and I quite like how they turned out, except I'm wondering if I might do a repaint. These dark gray squadron colors, combined with the heavy weathering, make it look a little dirtier than I'd like. And I'm wondering if that's why in all the movies the X-Wings have bright colors, to add a little bit of color and pop to kind of break up kind of the dirt and the dinge and the weathering, to kind of pull it together. So I'm wondering if I do a bright blue coloring, make them part of Blue Squadron, if that might make them just look a tiny bit better. But I quite like them as they are. My Shadow 1 and my Shadow 2, my Shadow Squadron escorts here. In reality, the Fine Molds is bigger than the Bandai. You can really see here kind of where they're right up next to each other. But detail-wise, I know the Bandai has a little bit more, but looking at the Fine Molds, not a big deal. I think being able to accent those panel lines with a little bit of a wash, that was nice on the Bandai. That's a little bit messing on the Fine Molds, but the Fine Molds is probably a little bit more accurate. Very nice build. If you can get a hold of a Fine Molds X-Wing, I highly recommend them. It's a little bit better of a building experience, but Bandai overall, tiny bit more detail. Hands down, the Bandai and the Fine Molds just clean the clock of anything put out by AMT or by Revell. That was the Bandai we had a close look at a second ago. Here is our Fine Molds. Just no bad angles. There are really no bad angles on an X-Wing. Good looking ships, very nice. Put little non-cannon droids in both of these, left the droids a little bit cleaner than the rest of the ship. Very fun. If you can hunt these down, I highly recommend them. I'm going to be working on a few more Star Wars ships over the next couple months. I think I'm going to do a sequel trilogy X-Wing next. That'll be a Bandai. And I also have a Millennium Falcon. I have a Bandai 1/44th scale Millennium Falcon I'm going to be working on over the summer. So stay tuned for those videos, and I'll be back soon.